The night Jamie Ellison agreed to take the environmental tech job at Briar Hollow Generating Station, the plant had already stopped making power. What it made now was memory and noise. Fans that spun because nobody had told them how to retire, pumps that sighed in loops, and water with a chalk taste that stuck to your tongue like a dare. The company called it decommissioning. The town called it, maybe we'll get our river back. Jamie called it rent. Briar Hollow sat in a bend of the river where the Appalachians pressed their thumbs into Kentucky and West Virginia and decided to share the blame. The plant's 2 concrete stacks still cut the sky like pencils held by a giant trying to remember a sentence. Below the stacks, east of the switchyard, lay the ash ponds, 2 shimmering rectangles that were never really still. Coal ash slurry looked like gray milk and smelled the way your hands smell after handling coins. On a windy night, it made a skin, and the geese skated on it badly. Her job: walk the berms, read the gauges, pull the samples, log the pH, the conductivity, the turbidity, make the numbers look tidy enough to survive email. The sampling cart had one wheel that always wanted to visit the same pothole. Jamie learned to tug left before the wheel remembered the rut. Her badge read contractor. Her hard hat read nothing. She wore a neon vest because it made men behave for at least 30 seconds. Midnight checks are quiet, her supervisor, Rick Ashby, said on her first night. He liked to smile when he said his last name, as if he had written the plant into existence. If a monitor chirps twice, then once, ignore it. We get phantom spikes. If it chirps long, call me. And don't wander past the north berm. Hunters use the tree line. They get possessive. The monitors chirp too short, some long, the way crickets do math. On the north berm, where Jamie wasn't supposed to go, the chirps leaned toward long. She kept her path anyway. A straight loop, south weir, west pump, east culvert, lab. The lab was a portable with a humming fridge and a whiteboard that said, "But first, do no press," next to the emergency stop for the transfer pumps. Someone had drawn little devil horns on the word press. The first real thing was the fish. At 02:07, her headlamp found 3 bluegill belly up in the ditch, where the contact water bled under the fence. Into the creek the maps insisted was seasonal. It had rained at dusk. Stormwater is impatient. It takes the fastest story downhill. Jamie knelt and touched a pale belly soft, not stiff, fresh. The discharge pipe at the culvert wore a necklace of gray foam. She took pH 10. 6. The permit said, keep it between 6 and 9. In the log, she did not write, like a dare. She took a picture on her phone that a lawyer would later describe as anecdota, and a mother would call enough. At 02:21, she called Rick. He picked up on the second ring, sounding like a man who sleeps next to his boots. Overflow? Culvert foam, 10.6. Rain sneaks the numbers, he said. Add dilution at the weir. Open G3 for 20 minutes, then close. We'll recheck at shift change. G3 was a gate on the clean water channel that fed from the old cooling intake. Opening it would pour river water into the outflow and drag the pH down. It was the math the plant had used long before Jamie. When in doubt, add river. She stood at G3 with her hand on the wheel and thought about what it means to make a number look polite. She opened halfway. The weir sang louder. The foam pulsed, thinned, learned to pretend. At 02:41, the pH read 8, 9. She wrote the number and tasted chalk in the back of her throat like a word she hadn't learned yet. The second real thing was the trucks. By day, dump trucks hauled ash out in tidy gray mountains labeled with cheerful words like beneficial reuse. The company said they were turning waste into engineered structural fill for new shopping centers and school parking lots. At night, 1 or 2 trucks still rolled, which made no sense. Beneficial reuse likes daylight. The night trucks came in from the quarry road, lights off until the last turn, bed covers flapping like flags too shy to commit. Night trucks? She asked Rick on her third shift. Legacy material, he said. Old cells, dry. We move it when we can. Where to? A permitted monofill, he said, and the way he said permitted made the word sound like a floor you could fall through. Jamie started keeping a notebook that wasn't the log. Not the company's spiral with the pre-printed boxes. A brown paper thing with a rubber band that lived in the bottom of her backpack and smelled like coffee and weather. She wrote the truck numbers, the time stamps, the direction the dust blew when the bed tipped. She wrote names people said quietly: Albright Construction, Ridge Partners, Beneficent Materials. She wrote the phrase monofill and drew a little frowning hill. The third real thing was the school. On Saturday, she stopped by her mother's house, the small one on the hill with the porch that held last year's wind chimes like a museum of weather, to fix the back door that had become a philosophy. On the kitchen table, a letter from the county health department. Routine monitoring notice. School 3 well shows elevated boron, molybdenum. Advisory to limit infant formula mixed with tap water pending further testing. Jamie swallowed. School 3 stood half a mile below, the plant on a limestone seam that liked to share. She pictured babies, which is a terrible way to picture boron. Sunday overnight, a boy on a bike watched her from the culvert. 11, maybe. Hoodie up. He didn't smile. You the water lady? I'm a tech, she said. Shouldn't be down here after dark. My pawpaw fishes here, he said. Said we used to get catfish with bellies like grocery bags. Now it's like they swallowed a battery. Go home, she said, too sharp, because fear dresses like attitude when you don't want to hand it to a kid. He rode away without hurry. She felt the sentence, I'll file a report, form itself like a scab. In the lab that night, the printer produced a manifest by itself, a stack of barcodes for loads Rick had not mentioned. 9 Ignite, destination, Suncrest School, material, base course. She held the paper like it might decide to be wrong if she squinted. She Googled Suncrest, a new elementary going up on the ridge above the Walmart, all glass and kindness, renderings with children the color of brochures. The road base under the parking lot would be gray. She had learned to tell by the smell. She took a photo of the manifest. She sent it to herself, to an account, with a name that sounded like a craft blog, Yoke and Wool. She sent it to a reporter 2 counties over who had once covered a coal ash spill and had a Twitter bio that said, Recovering Optimist. He wrote back, Sources? She wrote, Working on it. The fourth real thing was the storm. Appalachian storms are like men. The ones that look small can wreck you. The line of red on radar at 11:30 looked like a suggestion. At Uwai 012, the wind hit the berm like news. The pond surface shredded into white. The North Berm monitor cheeped one long tone and then another. Not phantom, not shy. Water level plus 4 inches and rising. The public siren at the plant's entrance coughed like it hadn't used its voice in a while. Jamie ran the berm with her headlamp, making a tunnel for her future. The animal tracks in the clay showed raccoon, heron, a domestic dog from the trailer park. She felt her boots slide toward the wet side because physics likes drama. At the spillway, the skimmer pipe chattered on its hinge. The emergency siphons had not been pulled in 2 years. The siphon ropes had grown into the willow roots like bad memory. She radioed Rick. North Berm crest, approaching freeboard limit. Hold intake G1 closed, he said. Open the siphons if you can. If not, bleed at the weir. This water will go straight to the creek, she said. Everything goes somewhere, Rick said, which is not policy, but it is accurate. She put her shoulder into the siphon rope and felt it resist, like a habit. It came up ugly, belched gray, and then took like a straw in the mouth of a thirsty god. The pond dropped half an inch and then an inch. The creek below brown foamed in agreement. Somewhere down there, the boy on the bike would sleep with his window open if his mama let him. She thought about the battery belly catfish and wanted to borrow a different job for a day. At 01:33, headlights bobbed on the quarry road. Night trucks, a line of 3. Their tarp straps thrummed. They idled at the scale and then rolled back, not into the plant, but around the back fence to the old gate that nobody used since the Keys stopped knowing the lock. The first truck took the path along the north tree line, past the sign that said, "No access." Jamie killed her headlamp and went down on a knee by the culvert, the way you do when you want to be both brave and small. They dumped in the dark. She heard the hydraulic hiss and the soft roar of dry ash finding its way into wet. The berm settled like a sigh. She imagined a backhoe smoothing the pile at dawn and calling it maintenance. She took photos anyway. Tailgate number, silhouette of the load, the saucer eyes of a raccoon watching like a union steward. She sent the pictures to Yolkenwool and to the reporter and to a friend of her mother's who taught science and still used the word steward without irony. She typed, "North berm fill in storm." She added the words, "This is not permitted," and then deleted them because she didn't have the permit in front of her, and the law likes to be precise when it's pretending to be fair. At 02:07, the pH at the culvert read 11. 2. The foam made a sound like paper being gently torn. She imagined infant formula mixing with that number, the way water carries math into bodies that haven't learned to bargain. She opened G3 and then closed it, and then opened it halfway, and then closed it again because she couldn't decide whether she wanted to make the number look nice for the report or loud for the people who kept saying, "We'll review." She left it closed. The number stayed ugly. She took a photo of the strip with her finger in the frame so no one could say it came from the internet. In the morning, the company sent an email with 4 adjectives and no verbs. We remain committed to safe, sustainable, community-minded closure. The county sent a notice about a public listening session at the library. Rick sent, proud of the team on storm response, with a little thumbs up emoji that made Jamie want to pry something else. At the library, the vendor from Beneficent Materials wore a blazer the color of asphalt and a smile that belonged at ribbon cuttings. He said their product was chemically inert. Jamie stood in the back and held her throat like it might try to speak without permission. A woman whose baby sat in a car seat on the floor asked if inert means safe to drink. The vendor said, "We don't recommend drinking any construction base." And the room made the sound of a laugh that doesn't have time to be humor. When it was Jamie's turn at the microphone, she said, "The permit is public. The pH is public. The foam is public if you stand at the culvert after midnight." The mayor said, "Let's keep it productive." The vendor said, "Let's focus on the future." Jamie said, "The future is downstream." The room exhaled through its nose like a tired horse. The next day, HR asked for her badge for inventory. She gave them the wrong one, the one with a crack in the clip. She kept the working one. She told herself she would give it back when the number stopped needing someone with a pocket. 2 nights later, the transfer pumps started on their own at 00.06 without the schedule calling their name. The lab printer coughed up a bill of lading for 9 sick night again, this time with destination, Suncrest School, Feest Ouwentoots. Jamie took video of the pumps singing to themselves and the printer confessing to nobody. She walked to the Do No Press board and stared at the emergency stop. She pressed once, quick. The pumps coasted down like a sigh at a funeral that had run too long. She waited 3 minutes, took pH again, documented. She pressed again. She called the county hotline, the one that lands on a recorder that has heard more courage at 2 a.m. than the legislature hears in a session. She read the lot numbers. She said, "I am pressing stop." She spelled her name, then didn't, then did again. She wrote the time in her notebook and underlined it twice. At 01:02, Rick's truck lights swung into the lot. He stood in the lab doorway like a man who had promised someone else he would fix it. "You can't do that," he said. "I did. They'll fire you." "Maybe they'll stop dumping at a school tonight," she said. "You think a parking lot is a mouth?" he said, and his voice held more tired than mean. "I think water is," she said. He rubbed his face like a man trying to move the years around. "You think I don't drink the same water?" "I think your bonus says different verbs than my kid." He looked at her for a long time and then reached past her and hit start. The pumps took the breath they like before they sing. She hit stop. He hit start. She hit stop. They stood like children at a light switch, arguing electricity. Then he laughed once, quietly, like a person who has realized the script doesn't fit anymore. "All right, Jamie," he said. "Let's not do this like men. Let's call Lacey." Lacey was the state inspector who never answered on the first ring. Tonight she did. "Tell me you're at your desk," she said. "I'm at their lab," Jamie said. "And? Storm? Foam? pH ugly? Trucks dumping North Berm? Printer making school base at midnight? Pumps running without schedule? Emergency stop works?" "Text me your location," Lacey said, "and leave the stop where your gut says." At Nordo 211, 2 state trucks rolled in with magnetic badges that could be peeled off if the politics changed tomorrow. Lacey wore jeans and a jacket that had seen more culverts than hearings. She took samples like a woman who enjoys being right and fears enjoying it too much. She kept her back to the fence where a camera might pretend to be a tree. She looked at Jamie's notebook and nodded once, which is a sentence when you mean it. She asked Rick for the run sheets. He produced a version that did not include midnight pumps. Lacey asked to see the PLC. He said it was locked out. She said, "Everything opens if I write the right word on the right form." She wrote it. It opened. The midnight schedule sat there like a cat with ash on its whiskers. At 03:02, Lacey sealed 3 coolers with blue tape and said, "You have a ride along mouth. Want to use it?" Jamie thought about her mother's kitchen and the letter on the table and the boy on the bike and the fish bellies. "Yes," she said. The press release landed 2 days later with verbs this time: notice of violation, cease and desist, unpermitted discharge, immediate corrective action. The company issued their own verbs: disagree, legacy, cooperate. The truck stopped for a minute. The internet yelled at itself. The school's contractor quietly ordered crushed limestone from 3 counties over, and a sign appeared on the chain link that said, "Proudly building with safe materials," which made Jamie's mouth hurt with the effort of not heckling. Rick texted, "They'll put you on leave." She texted back, "Already did." He wrote, "Sorry." She wrote, "Fix the siphons." The plant put Jamie on administrative leave, pending review. She filed for unemployment that would not come, because contractors are by design plausible deniability in pants. A man in a truck idled across from her mother's house 3 afternoons in a row and looked at his phone the whole time. The boy on the bike appeared once, held out a Ziploc with 3 dead minnows, and said, "They're little, but Mama says they count." She took the bag like communion and promised a lab that wasn't paid by the pound. When the hearing came at the county building with the beige walls that make coffee taste legal, Rick sat at a table with counsel and looked older than his hands. Lacey brought maps and tubes and a way of saying exhibit that turned it into plain speech. The beneficent materials guy said misunderstanding. A lawyer said beneficial reuse. Enough times that the words began to sound like a brand of gum. Jamie read her notes like a weather report. When she reached the part with the emergency stop, the room got the quiet that makes decisions. Someone coughed, someone whispered, "Good." The order required liners where there had been none, monitoring where there had been shrugs, and a community oversight meeting monthly in the library where the Teen Anime Club meets. It did not fire the stacks or fix the past. But on the next storm night, the siphons were pulled early, the G3 gate stayed shut, and the foam at the culvert sounded like rain, not paper. Months later, at Suncrest ribbon cutting, children ran on asphalt, which is not food. Jamie brought bottled water in a cooler because she refuses to pretend the fountains are neutral until the lab says so twice. The principal smiled the smile of a woman who has learned to thank while choosing her battles. The boy on the bike wore a clean shirt and asked if schools could have creeks as pets. Jamie said yes in a voice that meant not yet. At home, her mother kept the county letter in a drawer labeled important and added a copy of the order behind it. The wind chimes learned the new wind. The river remembered nothing, which is rude and also its job. Some nights, when the fog sits low and the stacks forget who they used to be, Jamie drives past the plant and stops at the wide spot by the culvert. She shines a light into water that looks like water. The pH strip blushes the color of forgiveness. A heron lifts off from the bank with a sound like a book closing. She breathes and lets the night keep the rest.